Andrew Jenkins' sister has entered the chat, and she has some things to clear up, and you need to hear about it. Aside from this video that she posted, she was on live last night with Arlita. I was one of the few people in that live, and I want to mention a couple things that she did not say in this video, so definitely stick around because we need to talk about that too. First and foremost, Drew has never been diagnosed with autism. He is not autistic. He does not have epilepsy. Epilepsy does run in his family on the women's side. The men do not have it. Third of all, he was never beaten, neglected, abused, mistreated, none of that. They actually lived pretty good lives, to be honest. So like I said, I was in the live last night and she was answering all the questions, okay? She opened up and went into a lot of detail about her upbringing, their family, all of that. They started out in Brooklyn, I believe before she was born. She is the younger sister, and Brooklyn got a little rocky, so they moved out to Oregon so they could have a better life. Her father worked tirelessly to make sure that he was able to provide any and everything for them. She played lacrosse. That's money. Drew played football for, I believe, 8 years, if I'm not mistaken. They went to Disney World. They went to Miami several times to visit family. North Carolina, KOA camping grounds. Like, literally, the type of life that he's trying to portray that he just grew up in that was just so horrible, and that's why he is how he is. It's not, the math is not math.
Let's begin with a moment that shattered what little trust remained and why this story is gaining so much attention. Drew's sister, typically quiet, deeply private, and the kind of family member who avoids online drama, finally broke her silence. But this wasn't a cloud-chasing move. This wasn't for attention. It was born out of heartbreak, disbelief, and a sense of duty. Because this time, Drew went too far. In front of thousands of followers, Drew accused their late father, a man who passed nearly a decade ago and cannot defend himself, of abuse, neglect, and being the root cause of his lifelong trauma. And for his sister, that was beyond forgiveness. For years, she watched him from a distance, staying silent through every outrageous claim, every manipulative twist of the truth. She didn't say a word when Drew claimed to suffer from seizures, despite never being diagnosed or treated. She bit her tongue when he cycled through an endless list of health excuses. Heart issues, high blood pressure, pre-diabetes, all unverified, all conveniently timed to explain why he couldn't walk or show up for his responsibilities. She remained composed even when he spun dramatic stories on social media, using emotional triggers to distract from the fact that he was actively avoiding accountability, all while staying active on TikTok, doing live streams, posting content, and chasing online fame. When he chose to drag their father's name into the narrative, when he publicly accused the very man who raised them of abuse, of failing them, of being the root of his suffering, that was her breaking point. This wasn't just another exaggeration. It was a betrayal of legacy. Their father wasn't just some background character. He was the one who provided stability, discipline, and love. He was the one who worked long hours, planned family trips, and truly tried, to give them a better life. And Drew rewriting that history to serve his new image was too painful to ignore. For his sister, it became more than just personal. It was about preserving truth, protecting the honor of a man who could no longer speak for himself, and standing up for a version of their past that actually existed. She didn't show up with drama. She showed up with evidence. Old family photos capturing moments of joy, birthdays, vacations, holidays, personal stories that didn't align with Drew's tragic rebrand. Her voice shook, not with anger, but with heartbreak. This wasn't an attack. It was a daughter publicly mourning the assassination of her father's memory. And when she laid it all out, the contrast between Drew's claims and the reality she lived, it became clear that his narrative had been carefully constructed to earn sympathy, deflect blame, and build a following. And it backfired.
Does this really look like a face that was abused? I do not think so. Hi, TikTok. This is Andrew's little sister. We grew up in the same household, same mom, same dad. That is us in the top left as kids. I am close with Arlita and my nephew, and I was on her live last night just clearing the air in my family. I have not said anything up until this point because he's really just destroyed his own name. But now he is trying to drag my family into the mud. My dad is deceased and has been since 2017. That is me and him at the Oregon Duck games in the bottom right. He was an amazing man. So despite whatever you were told, that is completely false.
Let's rewind to what Drew and Stephanie put online, how they framed their story, and what his sister later revealed that contradicted nearly every piece of it. In a video shared to Drew's platform, he and Stephanie sat together in what they described as a heartfelt and vulnerable discussion on childhood trauma. They opened the video with a trigger warning, noting that they would be addressing themes of physical punishment, emotional struggle, and past pain. From the very beginning, they wanted the audience to expect something raw, something deep. Stephanie quickly added that she was an empath and couldn't bring herself to speak fast due to the emotional weight of the subject. So Drew took the lead. What followed was a carefully woven narrative. Drew claimed that he had recently discovered that he stims, a term used for repetitive physical behaviors that can be associated with sensory regulation, often seen in individuals with autism spectrum disorder. He credited Stephanie with recognizing this behavior in him, drawing parallels to what their toddler son Boba does. He claimed the repetitive motion he performs while washing his hands was the first moment of realization. He added he wasn't comfortable enough to demonstrate the motion on camera, framing that hesitation as further evidence of his emotional vulnerability.
Okay, babe, I guess here goes nothing, right?
Yeah, and TW for anybody who doesn't want to talk about childhood trauma and being smacked around. So,
however you want to start it, I don't care.
Okay. Anyways, babe.
Some of the things is gonna be super. It's kind of.
It's hard.
I'm not good at talking, so it's.
And it's hard for either of us to talk about because I'm an empath, and this stuff is just not easy for me to discuss either. So, talking about traumatic past or anything like that is. I think we briefly mentioned before that.
So I do STEM. I didn't know. I guess I didn't know. I guess it was stimming until Steph was like, "Do you stim?" And I was like, "What? I mean, what is that?" And she was like, "Well, the same thing that Bubba does. It's just something you just might hide it." And I never really thought of it that way until I realized it's the same. It's the same repetitive motions that I do when I'm washing my hands or when I go in the bathroom. I'm not comfortable showing what I do yet, just because I'm not there. I'm not there mentally. But the autism thing.
Then came the reveal. Drew believed he might be autistic. He laid out a list of behaviors that, in his eyes, served as signs. He said he remembered obscure work codes from jobs he hadn't worked at in years, that he disliked small talk, that he constantly wore headphones even when nothing was playing, just to create mental space, that he didn't like being around people unless absolutely necessary, that he avoids confrontation and finds comfort in silence. Stephanie jumped in to reinforce the claim, saying she always struggled to get Drew to see her side of things, that he always defaulted to logic and lacked the kind of emotional flexibility most people have. But now, she said, it all made sense, that he wasn't ignoring her. He simply processed the world differently. But they didn't stop there. The conversation turned toward their toddler. They said he also exhibits similar signs. And although no doctor or professional had ever evaluated Boba, they speculated that he, too, was likely autistic. And because of that assumption, they insisted that they would never discipline him the way Drew had been disciplined growing up.
The autism thing, the whole autism thing, I don't know, I guess I don't really think how other people think. I don't.
There's been multiple things throughout, like even like when you were talking about when you worked at Safeway prior and how you processed the orders you're supposed to, I don't know, inventory and just everything you retained.
Oh, don't talk to me about the toxic things that I just still remember. Just produce codes from years ago, and just things that I feel like other people would forget not working at certain places for a while that you still do. Good job, mamas. Bendy. And I don't feel like I think like everybody else. I feel if people believe it or not, I don't know. It may be I may be more logical, maybe a different logic, but I feel like I definitely do see things differently than most other people.
Drew then described his childhood as a series of brutal punishments. He said he was whooped so severely that he sometimes couldn't sit for days, that he was misunderstood, emotionally neglected, and left to navigate the world alone. That his father, now deceased, was the primary enforcer of these punishments. That his father failed to recognize his unique needs and treated him with cruelty instead of compassion.
Everybody else, I feel if people believe it or not, I don't know. It may be I may be more logical, maybe a different logic, but I feel like I definitely do see things differently than most other people.
It's not just that. There's times that I feel like I'm having a conversation with you and trying to explain my perspective, and there's just one perspective to you, and there's no other way around it. It's your logic in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that goes for multiple things. I mean, that's probably where my attitude arises from too, just because
you see things one way and we don't necessarily see it the same way, so you're trying to explain it, but it's like
ain't nobody want to see it. So I'm either if you do listen, then you do. If you don't want to, I'm just like, okay, whatever, I don't want to deal with you anymore.
Right. And then like it does seem like much like with Bubba, which I knew to know this aspect of it, but I'm just saying like
the dissociation.
Disassociation and just being completely in your own world and realm,
yeah.
You know?
I don't know if this dissociation has to do with like my past and being whooped to the degree that I was for who knows what reasons. If I was stimming or not, who knows? But it was severe to the point where I could not sit down multiple times, and that's something I don't like to really discuss, but it is what it is.
Yeah,
and I really didn't think I was a bad child. I mean, everybody has children that make bad decisions, but I feel like I got beat and whooped more than necessary or normal. And I guess, like I always said, like my dad was a good dad for a certain way, for certain things, I guess. But I guess the other ways that he kind of handled things, I mean, he did teach me things, but also left me to learn a lot of things on my own.
Had a very, I don't know.
This portion of the video was deeply emotional. Drew's voice cracked at times. Stephanie held his hand, occasionally wiping tears. The comments were flooded with support, the viewers expressing sympathy, sharing their own trauma and thanking Drew for his bravery. But here's where the narrative started to fall apart, because Drew's sister, who grew up in the exact same household, raised by the same father and mother, and witnessed the same environment, would later speak out and say that nearly everything Drew said was a complete fabrication. And when she did, the story changed. Drew's sister didn't just post a few vague comments or share cryptic TikTok reactions. She took a bolder, more deliberate step, going live with Alita, the mother of Drew's oldest son, who also had a close relationship with their family and knew Drew's late father personally. This wasn't just a spontaneous outburst. It was a coordinated moment of truth, a breaking of silence that had clearly been building for years. And when she spoke, it wasn't with bitterness or anger. It was with clarity, pain, and a deep sense of responsibility. She explained that Drew had been lying to the public for a long time. He had floated different health issues as excuses for his behavior. First, seizures, then chronic back pain, followed by high blood pressure, pre-diabetes, and most recently, autism. Not once, she said, had any of these been professionally diagnosed. They were self-declared, unverifiable, and conveniently used when accountability was expected of him. And for the longest time, she said nothing, choosing instead to watch from the sidelines, hoping he would course correct. But when Drew shifted his narrative and painted their father as an abuser, someone who traumatized and hurt him as a child, that was the final straw. According to her, their father was not perfect, but he was present, caring, and devoted. To hear Drew reduce him to a villain, especially knowing he's no longer alive to defend himself, felt like a personal betrayal, not just to her, but the entire family legacy. She brought out photos as living proof, images from family vacations to Disney World, cozy weekends spent camping at KOA sites, cross-country drives to North Carolina, and joyful birthday celebrations. These were not the memories of children raised in terror. These were memories of joy. Drew, in every picture, looked well cared for, loved, and happy. He didn't look like a neglected child. He looked like someone who grew up in a home that tried, even through challenges, to give them everything they could. She went on to dismantle one of Drew's most dramatic claims, that he had. She clarified with confidence that epilepsy runs on the maternal side of the family, affecting their mother, grandmother, but never. There were no medical records, no family accounts, no known history that would support Drew's statement. She made it clear this wasn't just an embellishment, this was a fabrication. She addressed the autism claims head on. He's never been diagnosed, she said plainly. He's never seen a professional, never gone through a proper evaluation, never even expressed serious concern until recently, when it became useful for the narrative.
Does this really look like a face that was abused? I do not think so. Hi, TikTok. This is Andrew's little sister. We grew up in the same household, same mom, same dad. That is us in the top left as kids. I am close with Arlita and my nephew, and I was on her live last night just clearing the air of my family. I have not said anything up until this point because he's really just destroyed his own name, but now he is trying to drag my family into the mud. My dad is deceased and has been since 2017. That is me and him at the Oregon Duck games in the bottom right. He was an amazing man, so despite whatever you were told, that is completely false. But I mean, go off. My mom is Puerto Rican, my dad is black. My grandmother, who is full Puerto Rican, is in the top right. That's my brother with her in Miami on a family vacation that we took. We took family vacations every year. If we didn't go visit family in Miami or New Jersey or North Carolina, we would go camping at a KOA or drive somewhere and go tent camping. We've also been to Disney World. My dad was a wonderful dad and did everything he could to give us a great life. My mother as well. That is us at the bottom left. Me at, 4 or 5 years old. My brother is to the right of me, I guess, facing the picture to my right, in the striped shirt. He's 4 years older than me. That was, again, another trip we took to North Carolina to visit my cousins, which are the two gentlemen you see behind me on the other side in the green shirt and the yellow shirt. I just wanted to come on here and clear the air. I did my best to clear the air and answer as many questions as I could last night. But there's a million questions out there. There's a million lies out there. My brother does not have autism. He's never been diagnosed with autism. He does not have epilepsy. Epilepsy only runs on the women's side of my family. My mother has it, and it stopped with her. My grandmother has it. She is deceased as well as of March. Rest in peace. I appreciate all of you guys who had tuned in last night to our live just to get to know me for a second. I'm not used to doing any of this, but it was necessary because my family's name is involved and we share a last name, and I refuse to let that be dragged through the mud any more than it already has been, especially when it comes to our upbringing. We did not grow up rough. We did not grow up abused. He was not neglected. We lived a great life. My family did their best. My parents did their best, and I am happy with the way we were raised. I'm happy with the way we were disciplined, which was very minor. We were not abused. We got spanked every once in a while, but we got talked to. My dad poured words and love into us, not anger and abuse and mistreatment. That was not the case. My mother either. But like I said, go off. He's clearly been doing his big one on the internet and getting that 15 minutes of fame. So I just wanted to make sure that that was not involving my parents' name, who they worked hard to keep from getting dragged in the mud. So I refuse to just sit back and let him kiki and caca on something that is really not funny. It's kind of gross, but like I said, go off, do your big one. Let me conclude this video by apologizing to the autism community on my brother's behalf. Although I do not associate with him, that was not okay to use autism as a scapegoat for your personal problems and negligence in your own life. Jojo signing out. Have a good day.
Her disappointment wasn't just for her family's sake. It was also for the autism community. I am sorry, she added, to anyone out there genuinely living with autism who now has to see someone exploit your condition to excuse their own lack of effort as a parent and partner. And then came the moment that struck viewers hardest. He wants sympathy, she said, but he won't even show up for his fast. He hasn't paid child support. He hasn't called. He hasn't tried. But somehow, he is still blaming our father for the man he's become. Her words weren't cruel. They were raw. They weren't meant to shame. They were meant to stop the lie. What she delivered wasn't bitterness. It was a wake-up call. Her message rang clear through the live stream and echoed across comment section. Drew isn't being misunderstood. Drew is being irresponsible. And finally, someone from his family was brave enough to say it. A pattern of deflection, Stephanie's parallel. And here's where the pattern becomes disturbingly clear and nearly impossible to ignore. And here's where the pattern becomes disturbingly clear and nearly impossible to ignore. Stephanie has built her entire online presence around victimhood. She's made repeated claims about her family mistreating her, abandoning her, and even leveled deeply disturbing accusations of abuse allegations that her mother and brother both strongly deny. According to them, Stephanie's estrangement from the family didn't stem from abuse, but from disapproval of her choices, specifically her involvement with Drew. It wasn't about rejection, it was about boundaries. And when those boundaries didn't align with her life decisions, Stephanie reframed the situation into one of betrayal, pain, and mistreatment, all for the camera. Her brother, in particular, has been vocal in defending their mother. He has pointed out inconsistencies in Stephanie's stories, expressed concern for the impact of her accusations on the family, and even stated that if what Stephanie claimed had any truth to it, none of the siblings would have left their children.
Okay, babe, I guess here goes nothing, right?
And TW for anybody who doesn't want to talk about.
So when Drew began
trauma
accusing
and
his own father
being
of
smacked around.
psychological abuse, it wasn't just similar.
So-
it was predictable.
However you want to start it, I don't
Together,
care.
Okay.
Drew and Stephanie seem to follow the same emotional
Anyways.
playbook. Claim trauma without evidence, blame their upbringing for their current failures.
Anyways, babe.
And use
Some of the
those
things is gonna be
narratives
super.
to
It's
gain
just, it's kind of.
sympathy
It's.
from an
It's hard
audience
I'm not good at
that
talking,
doesn't
so
better.
it's.
They
And it's hard
repeat
for
the
either of
same
us to talk
cycle.
about because I'm an
Reflect
empath and this stuff is just not easy for me to
Frame
discuss either.
themselves
So
as
talking about
misunderstood survivors and redirect
traumatic past or
any
anything like
critique
that is-
as further proof that they are victims. And tragically,
I think we briefly
this
mentioned
pattern
before
doesn't
that
stop with them. It
So
now
I do
extended to
stim.
their child.
Uh,
A toddler who is still
I didn't
in the
know.
earliest stage
I
of
guess I didn't know.
development is now being
I guess it was
casually
stimming
and publicly
until
framed
Steph was
as
like,
autistic
"Do
by
you
both
stim?"
parents, without
And I
any
was like,
clinical diagnosis,
what is that?
without
And she was like,
any
well, the same thing that Bubba
validation
does.
from
It's just
pediatric
something,
specialists,
you just might hide
and
it.
without any concern
And I never really
of what
thought of it that
such a
way
label means
until
long-term. Drew and Stephanie
I realized
are
it's the
positioning their
same.
son's behavior
It's the same repetitive
as
motions that
evidence
I do when I'm washing my hands or when I go in the
But
bathroom.
let's be clear, this isn't awareness.
I'm not
This
comfortable
isn't
showing
advocacy.
what I do yet,
This
just because
is
I'm not there.
branding.
I'm
They
not
have
there
turned
mentally.
their son into a storyline, into a simple ad, into reason for why
but
their parenting doesn't need to improve. Because, according
the
to
autism
them,
thing.
he simply processes things differently. This isn't responsible parenting. It's narrative convenience. And what's worse, they haven't taken even the most basic step of medical opinion. They don't need a diagnosis when a social media declaration will suffice. This isn't parenting. It's exploitation, plain and simple. This goes too far. What Joe and Stephanie are doing goes far beyond a problematic TikTok trend. It's reckless, it's manipulative, and it's deeply harmful to the very communities they pretend to present and advocate for. This isn't just about clout chasing. It's about the casual and dangerous way they use trauma, illnesses, and neurodivergency as performance tools, backdrops for their online personas. They've turned real struggles that affect real people into hashtags and storylines, all for engagement, sympathy, and in many cases, monetary gain. And that should alarm anyone watching. Using autism, epilepsy, or childhood abuse as a content hook dilutes the real, lived experiences of people who carry these burdens every single day. There are parents struggling to get services for their autistic kids, adults living with epilepsy who work, raise families, and never ask for pity, individuals with PTSD who go to therapy, show up for work, and try to heal quietly. None of them have the luxury of reframing their pain for likes or editing their trauma into a neat, digestible video segment. And for Drew to accuse his deceased father of abuse, not in private, not in therapy, but on TikTok for an audience of strangers, it's not just irresponsible, it's betrayal. It's betrayal of their father's legacy, of the man who gave him more love, time, and effort than Drew has ever given his own children. The very same man who isn't here to defend himself. And yet, Drew is weaponizing his memory for internet validation. That's not growth. That's exploitation. Stephanie is not different. She echoes his narrative, spins his own story of victimhood, and adds fuel to a fire built on deceit. From false accusations against her own mother to dragging her toddler into vague diagnoses, she too has shown that she's more interested in performance than parenting. Together, they formed a disturbing alliance, a cycle of mutual manipulation where accountability is never welcome and truth is just another prop. So at what point do we stop watching in silence? When do we start asking, how many more lies will they tell? How many more relatives will they throw under the bus? How long until one of their children, who doesn't choose to be in this narrative, grows up and sees the digital footprint left behind by two adults more concerned with clicks than consequences? Because at the center of this mess is a child, a little boy being labeled as autistic on a public platform without any medical evaluation, a teenage son being completely erased and ignored, except when his absence serves a narrative. And on the sidelines, families, loving, flawed real families, being painted as monsters so Drew and Stephanie can play the misunderstood heroes. And let's not forget the audience. Thousands of viewers being emotionally manipulated into pity, anger, or blind support, unaware they're being drawn into a long-running storyline where the only winners are the people posting. Thankfully, someone finally stood up. Drew's sister broke the silence. She put facts in front of fiction. She reminded us that behind every story like this, there is a real family watching, real parents being drugged, real reputations being stained. And without her bravery, many people might still be believing every word Drew said. Let us know in the comments, do you believe Drew's sister? Should self-diagnosing for attention be allowed to go unchecked on social media? And most importantly, how do we protect children when they're being used as digital pawns? Subscribe for more in-depth social media investigations, emotionally intelligent commentary, and breakdowns that hold people accountable, because the truth matters more than clicks.